Hi everybody. Happy Sunday. How is everybody? How was week 2 of doing the low nickel diet? Does everybody like my shirt? I almost never wear it because it's so unusual, but I felt like wearing something special today. I also did my nails for St. Patty's Day, so that was fun. Hey Judy, hey Silvaria. Hi Joan. Hi Marjorie. Week 2 went awesome. Great. Happy Mother's Day in the UK. I didn't know that. Hey Allison. Hey Crystal. Mother's Day in the UK. Mother's Day in the United States is in May. It's right around my mother's birthday, actually. Oh, I'm glad everyone's here. Renee, love the shirt. Okay, good. I love it too. Yes, I'm excited for this live as well. Let's change this screen. Okay, so number one, before I forget, because I forgot last week, I was told by a couple people that I need to tell people to like the video. So if you guys could like the video, that would be great. It's supposed to help. So yeah, go ahead and like the video because I probably won't remember. And then what else? Oh, people were wondering if they should be joining on Facebook or YouTube because some people aren't seeing the comments to be able to do it. Anyway, I need to figure out how to move the comments into the video so you guys can see each other's comments because you guys comment in different places. So you can see everyone's comments. I have not figured that out yet, but I will. Every week I try to do at least like one thing better. So maybe next week that will be the thing that I try to get figured out for you guys is how to get the whole chat in the window. I'm not, I'm a doctor. I'm not like a social media person. So I need to learn how to do that. But anyway, so I'm gonna try and do that for you guys next week. But I appreciate all of you giving me suggestions of things that could make this better for you because that's the whole point, is to make, keep educating ourselves, keep improving our knowledge so we can do the low nickel diet better, so we can reduce our symptoms, and so we can have community together. So that's why we've been doing these lives. So today's special topic is going to be on nutritional deficiencies, either that are correlated with people with systemic nickel allergy or deficiencies that can occur when people go on the low nickel diet, and whether or not we can have a low nickel diet that does give us what we need. We're going to be answering that question today and some tips on how to do that. We're also going to talk about supplements and some of the potential problems with supplementation and supplements that are supported by the literature that can help people with our condition. And we're going to talk about even the testing aspect of deficiencies, what tests are helpful, what tests may be misleading, what tests we may want to ask for from our doctors, and so forth. That is, I'm training to become a pathologist. So I'm already a doctor, but I'm training to become a pathologist, which is a specialist in the diagnosis of disease. And a big part of that is understanding all the tests. So this was like a really good topic for me to prepare for you guys today. So thank you for asking for this topic and for being here. Thank you ahead of time for your questions and for your, your engagement and being here with me. I just have really, really loved our lives together and getting to know everyone. I feel like I learned so much from you guys, and I hope you learn from me too. Yvonne, hello from the Netherlands. Awesome. Welcome, Yvonne. You can see everyone's comments on YouTube. Okay, I did pull up YouTube so I could see what the experience is. I see, let's see. Do I see Yvonne's? I don't see Yvonne, so I don't see the Facebook comments in YouTube. And then in Facebook, I don't see the YouTube comments. But in my application that I'm using to live stream, I can see both of y'all's comments. So I can see the Facebook comments and the YouTube comments. So if I can move that onto the screen, y'all can see each other. Does that make sense? So yeah. So that's what I'll try to make happen next time. I know it's possible. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Okay. All right. So yes. So I asked everybody how this last week has gone. Hey, Batty. Do we have two Yvonnes, or is Yvonne on both? Did she move? Oh, she must have moved. Yes. You're on YouTube now too. Okay. I feel like we're kind of even amount on YouTube versus Facebook. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so my last week was better than the first week. I had way less gluten. If you don't know this, I guess I should introduce myself just in case. So I'm Dr. Laura Duzett, and I used to work in tech. I worked in tech for 10 years. And in 2016, I got hit by a car on my bike. I sustained a traumatic brain injury, and I couldn't work. I had to stop working. My recovery was really bad. My doctors were like, you just have to wait it out. I found out about this diet called the GAPS diet, which was supposed to help heal your brain by eating well for your gut health. So I started eating that diet, and my brain started doing better. But then, 6 months in, I started getting terrible eczema on my hands. It's called dyshidrotic eczema or pompholyx. But basically, it was so bad. It started out really small. It was itchy little blisters, and it just got worse and worse over time. My doctors were giving me creams and ointments per usual. They would reduce the inflammation, but not address the root cause. So it just kept getting worse and worse. Finally, I learned about the fact that a lot of dyshidrotic eczema is caused by something called systemic nickel allergy. And that is an allergy to nickel from food and water. And that can result in IBS. About 30% of people with IBS actually have systemic nickel allergy. About 40% of people with GERD actually have systemic nickel allergy. And I think it is 10 to 20% of people with a contact dermatitis to nickel will have this systemically. And the percentage of people without the skin symptoms, that has not been elucidated yet. They haven't figured that out in the literature. But those are some of the main things, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. I'll define it a little bit more. So anyway, I learned that I had this allergy. I needed to eat a low nickel diet. It's kind of a frustrating, confusing diet. So I wrote the Low Nickel Diet Cookbook and Guide. This is a cookbook that helps you eat. It basically simplifies eating the low nickel diet. It also tries to explain some of the lifestyle factors, things that you can do from a holistic standpoint to improve your symptoms and help keep the nickel out of your body. So that is that's who I am and why I'm here. Today we're going to focus on things like I said, like deficiencies, supplementation, things like that. Let's talk about, let's do my symptom tracking for a second. So everybody in the community has access to this. If you don't have access to the symptom tracker and you would like it, just email me and I'll send it to you. It's totally free. It's anybody can have it if they want. Let's go here. Okay, so symptom tracker. Everybody should be tracking their symptoms every week to see how things are progressing and changing, and maybe there's something in their diet that they should improve. Okay, so so you get to choose the symptoms that you want to track. These are the symptoms that I knew I had issues with that I wanted to track. So bloating and gas, that was a little bit better. Even more so than last time. I had one day of gas, and it was Saturday morning because I went out to eat with my husband the night before, and yeah, not as good of eating on that day. So we'll keep it at 5. GI cramps, diarrhea, constipation, that was a little bit better. So I'll keep it at 5. Face rash, rosacea, that is still like way better than it was. So we'll drop that even further. Brain fog, yeah, that was better. Headaches, I didn't have any headaches, so I'll just put that at a 1. Joint pain, I had a little bit of joint pain this weekend, similarly after eating not as well on Friday night. Joint pain, so I'll give that a 4. Respiratory runny nose, that was a 2. All right, so my overall symptom improvement in 2 weeks is 50%. So I've improved 50% in 2 weeks, which is pretty great. And I haven't even been perfect, which is like, super low nickel. Now, the first week I struggled with having chocolate. So I was very, very strict the first couple of years. I kept my nickel very low. And then I slowly tested eating a little bit higher nickel foods every now and again, and I didn't get my eczema back. And so that's a sign of the immune cells that have been trained to look for nickel. Over time, if your body is like, man, we haven't seen nickel in a long time, I don't think we need to support all of these cells all the time. So they start to kill off or reassign those cells to do other things. And so that is why over time, some people can start eating a little bit more nickel without having the same problems. But I definitely got more and more lax. I started eating gluten a little bit more. I started eating chocolate more. I started eating beans more, stuff like that. And some of these new inflammatory symptoms started popping up, like the rosacea, the joint pain, the runny nose, things like that. So that is why I'm trying to get a little bit more strict again to see if those things improve. Are they related or are these different things? So that's why it's important to track, right? So anyway, this last week, I only had chocolate once, and it was only because my attending at the hospital, she made a chocolate cake and she wanted everybody to have some. And in the past, I would have been like a lot more vocal about, no, I'm not going to do that. But instead I said yes, and I took it back to my desk and I had like 1 or 2 bites and then I threw the rest away. But yeah, so that was like less chocolate than I had the week before. So I'd say that's a win. And I didn't offend my attending, so that's good. Those sorts of decisions are really hard. Thankfully, I'm in a place that I'm not gonna super flare up just with a little bit of chocolate, but I definitely would have in the beginning. I definitely would have. So that's just because of all the hard work that I've already done. So don't be frustrated if you're not in that place yet. What else? I had less alcohol, which was good, and less gluten. I had a lot less gluten, so that was good. My goals for this coming week, especially based off of the research I did for this presentation today, I'm going to be making some additional changes to my diet to get a little bit more specific vegetables in, so we'll talk about that more. I did purchase a fiber supplement that I feel like really excited about trying because of it's very unlikely to have nickel contamination, so I'm excited about that, so we'll talk about that today. And then I'm gonna go for no gluten at all this week, and no chocolate at all this week. So those are my goals for iterative, like little baby step improvements. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure I won't be perfect, but that's okay. All I need is just a little bit of improvement, right? All right, so Allison, my week has been so much better. I know straight away whether I've been exposed to nickel immediately. Like today I have food at in-laws, just chicken cooked in the oven, but I started itching and couldn't understand why. Then I realized how it was cooked. Yeah, it can be, especially at the beginning when your symptom burden can be so high and your immune system is so like overreactive. It can be really sensitive, and that's definitely how it was for me. Allison, you tried, but it said your code wasn't valid. So the thing about the symptom tracker, I built it so that it didn't track, like it protected your data and will never go anywhere. But that means you have to always use the same device, the same browser, to do your symptom tracker. If you want to move to another browser or another device, all you have to do is make sure that you have that backup being sent to your email address so that you can just repopulate that backup in the new device. I have in the community, there is, when I announced the symptom tracker, there is a guide that you can read the instructions on how to use it. What gluten-free flours are safe? We're going to talk about that a little bit in this presentation, so wait on that one. I would say, just off the top of my head, like, I would definitely, at first, like, because there's processing involved in these flours that could introduce some nickel contamination from the machinery. But if you want to try like something like a rice flour or a potato flour, that can potentially be a little bit better. I'm not sure if in the Nickel Navigator, if they have gluten-free flours in there, but it's something to look at. M. Silvaria, is quercetin with bromelain okay? I read it comes from pineapple, so I was hesitant to buy it, but wanted to start quercetin. It depends what you're trying to achieve with the quercetin. Like, there may be a better supplement to try, because if it's like mast cell stabilization you're going for, there may be some other things you could try that have less potential for that, but yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Okay. All right, let's get started with the presentation. All right. Allison, I'll check in with you about the app a little bit later and we'll figure it out. Okay. All right, so common deficiencies in systemic nickel allergy syndrome and the low nickel diet. Here's the medical disclaimer. This is educational purposes. We are not having a doctor-patient relationship here. This is just for information. All right, so the most common symptoms and associated conditions, as I said earlier, eczema, hand dermatitis, widespread dermatitis. I had that at the beginning when I was like really sensitive. You can get it in like your flexor areas, basically, and like around your mouth, around your eyes, where there's a lot of sweat glands. It's where the body tries to release the nickel. So there's commonly immune reaction in those locations. But not everybody gets skin symptoms. Some people get only GI symptoms. Some people get all of these symptoms all at once. But IBS-like symptoms, the bloating, the pain, the diarrhea, constipation, GERD is even more commonly caused by systemic nickel allergy. So that's like the heartburn. Also, it's really common to have brain fog, fatigue. Chronic fatigue syndrome has been linked with systemic nickel allergy in many studies. Same with endometriosis, mast cell activation syndrome, almost certainly. If you have that, you are highly likely to be sensitive to nickel because nickel can directly trigger mast cells. And then the burning mouth syndrome, that's a really common early symptom that people get. Now, what's sad is not many physicians know about this. And commonly people with these illnesses, they're not easy to diagnose, especially if you don't know about this hypersensitivity. So often these people will see like over 5 specialists before someone finally gives them an answer. So I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to get the word out, and I appreciate all of you trying to do the same thing. I know somebody in the community this last week went to her doctor. I think she brought the letter to doctors off of my website. There's a letter that Dr. Zyrus wrote that has that talks about the allergy. It talks about the research. There are good citations in there. I think I need to update it because there's I think I could make an even better argument now with even more awesome citations that could help. but you can download that letter, you could print it out, you could send it to your doctor, and it will help them kind of get an idea that this is not just some like random like influencer that's influencing you to think that you have something you don't have. Like, this is a real condition that has been well researched. So that can be really helpful. And she did go to her doctor, and her doctor got really excited because she was like, wow, I think I have so many other patients that could benefit from this information. And so we just need to help educate people in the health community about it, because I never heard about it in medical school. I never heard about it in residency, but that doesn't mean that it's not a real thing. So yeah. Amanda, hey Amanda. Struggling to change my diet again. Sucks having an eating disorder in the past and now having medical diet restrictions. Yeah, that can be really challenging to navigate, for sure. Something that is good about reducing systemic inflammation, though, is that helps a lot with mental health. Inflammation in the brain, like there's lots of research to show connection between gut problems and mental health issues. The brain and the gut are very strongly related. They work together a lot, and when you're able to reduce problems in the gut, it helps calm the mind. So I know for myself, my mental health got a lot better as I ate a low nickel diet, and my brain fog, all of those things can really improve. So I really hope that ends up happening with you. Gilda, I seem to have all the symptoms at different times and sometimes all at once. Oh, I'm so sorry, Gilda. I'm happy to see you here. Oh, Amanda's a pediatrician. Amazing. I want to specialize in pediatric pathology. So we'll be working together. Marjorie heard about it from her herbal vet? Your dog's vet. Wow, that's awesome. Do dogs get this allergy? All right. So I already talked about how mast cells can be directly impacted by nickel. It's other of the innate immune cells can also be triggered by nickel directly instead of through the normal type 4 hypersensitivity, which is typically, if a doctor does know about this, they know it's a type 4 hypersensitivity, but what they don't understand is that nickel as an allergen is quite complex. It can do the type 4 hypersensitivity path, but also the innate path as well. So that's why people can get immediate reactions after they eat the nickel, or a couple of days later. And if you already have the couple days later like hypersensitivity response, then the cells are already kind of like hyped up and kind of waiting and anxious, if that makes sense, to like anthropomorphize them. They're going to be more sensitive to the next nickel that they see. And there's some supporting evidence there. But I always try to put citations below in the description, or at least in the comment. So if you want citations for any of these claims, please let me know. I try to have one for everything that I say. Okay, diagnostic problem. So I'm going to do very soon, probably within the next 3 weeks, a deep dive on all of the testing that people do in the world for this to make the diagnosis. Technically, it is, especially in the United States, it's a clinical diagnosis, which means it's not just a simple test, yes or no, typically for people. It's a diagnosis made from signs and symptoms. Basically, one of the best ways is to just try the diet and track your symptoms, like through my tracker, and see how things improve. That is how I was diagnosed. Now, it's easier for my dermatologist to probably feel good about the diagnosis because I already had a like a skin reaction to nickel. I grew up with that. But if you're able to document and show really good results after doing the low nickel diet, then you have your answer, right? But there are other tests, and there's a patch test. That's what most doctors will want to do, is a patch test. It's like a bunch of patches on your back testing a bunch of different allergens, and it can be a very helpful test. Unfortunately, the research has shown that only 38% of people who are systemically allergic to nickel will actually have a positive patch test on their skin. So that means you're missing like 62% of those people. They may get the patch test and then they're told they don't have this allergy, but they actually do have this allergy. So it's not a super sensitive or specific test. There is an oral patch test which goes in the mouth. Now this is a mucosal allergy. This will test whether or not your cells in your mucosa are reacting to nickel. Problem is, this is not available in the United States. And it is not validated by the FDA. That's why it's not available in the United States. I could probably make it available, but it wouldn't be validated. It wouldn't be covered by your insurance, at least not yet. But I'm now thinking about trying to validate this test because we need it, you know? Then you have there's something called the lymphocyte transformation test. And that is also not validated by the FDA. And I'll talk about it more in the deep dive that I do. But it doesn't test whether or not your immune cells are reacting in your mucosa to nickel. It will test if you have T cells that are sensitive, but they're in the periphery, they're not in the mucosa. So it doesn't prove anything. It only proves part of the picture, if that makes sense. And then you have, I forgot what they call it. It's where they give you a big bolus of nickel and then they test you. That is something that insurance doesn't like to pay for. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time and it's risky. So those are the different ways that you can test. The least expensive, least invasive, and perfectly reasonable test to do is trying the low nickel diet and tracking your symptoms and seeing if it gets better. Does everyone with a positive patch test have systemic nickel allergy? No, because that patch test on the skin, if you're talking about the one on the skin, that is just proving that your skin is sensitive to nickel. That the immune cells in your skin are sensitive to nickel. And there are people with this systemic nickel allergy that do not have a skin response. For the mucosal patch test, that is, do I have it on here? It's like 60%. Yeah, it's about 61.6%. So that catches 61.6%, but it doesn't catch everybody. And that's why a combination of tests is really the best way to go if you want to be as definitive as possible. It seems the patch test hypersensitized me to nickel. Yeah, that's possible, where you didn't have it before. This is something that can develop later in life, right? Like little girls that get their ears pierced, they may not get nickel allergy that first time, but it's the original like hit. There's a specialist, I thanked her in my book because I talked with her quite a bit when I was writing the book. And she's very passionate about this and like is trying to get the government to like put more rules around like jewelry not having nickel in it, because that's like an initial sensitization. And then later the body is like more primed to have that hypersensitization. So yeah, anyway, going off on a tangent here. All right. So what's the low nickel diet? So it's the primary treatment for systemic nickel allergy. And you need to eat fewer than 150 micrograms per day. Depends on how sensitive you are at the time. I always recommend people try to shoot for 50 to 100 at first, because there's a lot of learning to be done about where the nickel in their life is coming from, and you want a little bit of a buffer. Plus, the least amount of nickel you have coming, like let's say your glass is already really full of nickel, like the burden in your body, the amount of nickel that has been absorbed is really high. As you learn how to get rid of that nickel and you learn how to reduce the amount that's coming back in, you should start as low as possible. So it reduces that burden of nickel as quickly as possible and then reduces your systemic inflammation that way. So high nickel will come in plants and things that are heavily processed. So whole grains, legumes, seeds, nuts, oats, soy, chocolate, those are all very high in nickel. You definitely want to cut all of those out. And that means we need to like focus on animal-centered diet with key low nickel plants added in. And some people can reintroduce foods over time, like I talked about earlier. Some people have to keep low their whole lives. All right, let me make sure. Okay, so iron deficiency. I talk about this a little bit. I talk about this a lot more when I'm answering questions on Reddit. But so this was something new to me this year as I dug in more. I learned about one of the big deficiencies that they have found in the literature of people with systemic nickel allergies. A lot of us are anemic. We are low in iron. I've never been that way. I've always been a good meat eater, so I've always had a good amount of iron. But a lot of women in general and women with systemic nickel allergy are anemic. And the thing is that the way that our body gets iron in is through a transporter in the cells of our gut lining called the DMT1 transporter. And it's meant to get iron through. When we have all these like lovely mechanisms in our body to help balance things, right? And one of those things is that if we are low in iron, signals are sent to our gut cells that say, hey, we need more iron, so we need more DMT1 transporters. Make more of those so that we get a bigger percentage of the iron that's coming through, right? So that's a great idea, except because of the nature of like the size and the charge of nickel and cobalt. Nickel and cobalt can also use this transporter. So let's say that you are eating very low iron, but a lot higher nickel. There's going to be way more nickel that gets through than iron, right? Because the nickel can also use the same transporter. And then your body's like, where's the iron? Where's the iron? We need more of these transporters. So even more transporters are put into the cells. And and if you're still not increasing your iron, then there's not going to be as much iron getting in. It's still going to be the cobalt, the nickel, etc. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting enough iron. Heme iron is the best. We're going to talk more about that later. But you definitely want to know if your iron is a little bit low, and we'll talk about how to test that. Because as you increase the iron in your body will be like, okay, cool. We don't need a ton of DMT1 transporters. We can like lower that amount now. And then that will lower the amount of nickel that can get through. Okay, gut health, the overlooked foundation. So this is probably one of the big things that sets me apart from other people that talk about a low nickel diet. Is I really feel like we need to focus a lot more on gut health, because the research has shown, like these two papers that I have here, that people with systemic nickel allergy absorb a much higher percentage of the nickel that they eat. So if you have someone with systemic nickel allergy and someone with just like a skin allergy to nickel, and you give them the same meal with the same amount of nickel in it, the person with systemic nickel allergy will actually pull in way more nickel than the non-systemically allergic person. So that means there is something about their digestive tract, or many things about their digestive tract, that are increasing the ability for that nickel to get in. So the iron is one piece. Having intestinal permeability would be another. So eating gluten, having high stress, not enough sleep, drinking or eating too much sugar, having an imbalance, a bad imbalance in your microbiome, all those things can cause more intestinal permeability. So you want to address those things to help keep the lining of your gut nice and tight, so that not as much nickel is getting through and the right things are getting through and not the wrong things, right? So that's why targeted gut support is really important. That's why I like to make meat stock every week that has like really good collagen, glycine, proline, and glutamine, and is low histamine because it's a short cook broth. It's made in 3 hours. It uses muscle meats and lots of good connective tissue like the chicken feet and the skin that has the nutrients that we want to support our gut health. Like L-glutamine. L-glutamine is a good supplement that has been shown to help with improving that tight junction between the cells in your gut. And then L. reuteri, that is a strain of probiotics, so a strain of microbes, good microbes that we want. If we can get more of those in our gut, it has been shown in people with systemic nickel allergy to improve our GI and our skin symptoms. There is another strain called L. rhamnosus, and that has been shown just in general to be good for gut health. So sometimes that one is recommended as well. So documented deficiencies and vulnerable nutrients. So we talked about iron already. Eating a low nickel diet could potentially, like you might be low in calcium, iron, magnesium, vitamin A, folate, choline, vitamin D, vitamin E, and fiber. Maybe. So especially, I would say the magnesium, folate, and fiber. That's if you're not being really intentional and targeting these things. And so that's why we're having this talk, so we can help tweak and improve our diets and our supplements, right? Key foods that the low nickel diet eliminates that would have given us these things are the whole grains, the legumes, the nuts, and the seeds. They have lots of good fiber and some of these other nutrients, but that doesn't mean that we can't get them through other things at all. Okay, Joan, I want to address this right now because I looked into this. L. reuteri does not increase histamine, at least the kind of histamine that people who worry about histamine sensitivity or mast cell activation. There are two different pathways of histamine. There's H1 and H2, and L. reuteri increases the type of histamine that actually reduces inflammation. So you don't need to be concerned about L. reuteri. Now, I think there are very specific strains of L. reuteri that might do the other histamine, but the one in BioGaia, the one that I recommend through my site, thelownickeldiet.com/resources. If you go there and you go to the supplements, the brand that I recommend has the right kind of strain of L. reuteri that helps reduce inflammation. So yeah, you got to always make sure, you got to double check stuff like that. But I really appreciate you bringing that up because I saw somebody else say that in the other Facebook group, and it's wrong. So let's spread that around because it's good news. We like supplements that help reduce our overactivity and reduce inflammation. Lots of vitamin E has soy in it. Do you have a recommendation for a specific brand? We'll talk about that later. All right, how to test for these deficiencies. Okay, so standard labs that your doctor will test for some of these, like a CBC with a differential. There should be a ferritin level in there. Now there's a problem with that. We're going to talk about that in the next slide, but that is like a general test of iron status. There's like a whole, because you have levels, like ferritin is storage of iron. There's transferrin, which is the transfer of iron. There's all of these different levels, and they give us indications as a whole picture of what may be going on. So we'll talk about that in a second. Serum magnesium, that is a common magnesium test, but there are limitations to that as well, because it only tells you what's cycling through your bloodstream, well, your plasma really, but not what's in your tissues. 25 hydroxy vitamin D, that is the best way to test for vitamin D levels. Folate and B12, and then like it's called CMP, Comprehensive Metabolic Panel, that will include your calcium level. But none of these tests are perfect. They're not going to be able to measure what's in your tissues versus what's in your serum versus what's, you know what I mean? So they just give us some indication, and we need to look at everything all together. So more specialized testing would be RBC magnesium. So that tests the actual red blood cells, what's in your red blood cells as far as magnesium is concerned. And that will give you a little bit better of an indication of what's in your tissues, because you could have normal of this serum magnesium, a normal level of serum magnesium, but depleted in your cells, in your tissues. Methylmalonic acid and homocysteine are functional markers of B12 and folate deficiency. So there's a whole pathway of B12 and whether or not it's going to go this way or that way, depending on if you have enough of these other things. Like everything works together. It's very complicated. And then you want that full iron panel of serum iron, TIBC, transferrin, saturation, rather than just ferritin alone. And then vitamin E is rarely ordered, but for us, we may want to check it out. Okay, so the limitations of standard testing. I already told you about the serum magnesium, where it's insensitive, so it can be normal even if 20% of your RBC magnesium is low. So the ferritin paradox. So ferritin, your body is amazing, right? So let's say you had a pathogen, like an infection. Your body knows that a lot of microbes like iron. Iron makes them strong and they will want iron. And so your body's like, I know what to do. I'm going to take all this iron, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to hide it from the pathogen so that we can kill it. It doesn't get any stronger. Well, that means you could have really high levels of ferritin, but your body that like all of your tissues and stuff that like need the iron, need to use it, they're not getting it because your body's trying to protect you from this pathogen. So if you have signs in your body of like infection or inflammation or cancer, for example, that can potentially make it seem like you have enough iron, but you actually don't. So if you are at a high symptom burden, very inflamed, that test may not give you the full picture of whether or not you have enough iron for your whole body, right? So that's why you want to get all of the tests. What else did I want to tell you? Fiber deficiency, that doesn't have a lab test. That's more from your clinical symptoms, so constipation and your GI symptoms. One day I will do a whole deep dive on fiber because it's not so black and white. Some people need a lot of fiber. Some people do a lot better on lower fiber. But a lot of research shows that the higher fiber you get, the better. So I'm not going to go against that. Okay, so why supplements are commonly not recommended to people with systemic nickel allergy is that they're very commonly contaminated with nickel because of the processing and fillers. They use a lot of plant-based fillers that can have a lot of nickel in them. The manufacturing equipment will have nickel in them. These raw materials can have a lot of nickel. And so a lot of people have found when they start the low nickel diet to just stop all supplementation, except for the very few things that are recommended in the literature. And I am in the process of getting grants to study a suite of supplements to see the nickel content. So at least we can see how much nickel on average specific supplements may have so that we can be like, okay, at least we know we tested 3 different lots of this particular brand and it only had 10 micrograms per serving. So we have a general idea of what we may be able to supplement with. But it's probably going to be like a year before all that comes back, but I'm on it. All right, what has been recommended in the literature? Iron supplementation to correct the DMT1 upregulation, but iron supplements can be very hard on the stomach. People have a lot of trouble with them. I will be testing a bunch of different types of formulations of iron supplements because of the variety of problems that people have with them. So I'm hoping to get some like good data on that. But I'm going to have some recommendations in this presentation for maybe what to try. Vitamin C with meals to suppress nickel. So vitamin C, it's actually really good to make iron more bioavailable. So eating iron with your meal or eating vitamin C with your meal, but also vitamin C helps grab onto nickel and make it too big to pass through. It helps us not absorb as much nickel. So that is a recommendation that I would give almost anybody to at least try and see how they respond to it, adding vitamin C to their meals. L-reuteri, like we talked about earlier, L-rhamnosus for gut barrier and immune support, and then the low nickel diet itself. Fiber supplementation. Okay, so psyllium husk is what I have always used when I've tried to increase my my fiber. Excuse me, but not everybody responds well to it, and it's going to have like a risk of nickel being in it. It is a plant. Depending on where that plant was grown, how much nickel is in that soil, it could be in psyllium husk. Now, like the Now Foods, that's the brand that I would get. And I think it's the one that I recommend on my site. And I guess this other brand, Consul, I don't know that brand, are supposed to be cleaner options. But what's great about the acacia fiber and the methyl cellulose, those are supposed to be very, very low nickel risk. These are like trees and wood pulp that have very little nickel in them in general, and so you may get some from the manufacturing part of it, but those two have been studied, and I'm going to be trying the acacia fiber first, but also the methyl cellulose. That one looked really good. I mean, that's like synthetic, so it might be really good for us. Like, unfortunately, really natural things tend to be more risky for people with systemic nickel allergy. So I don't know if any of you have tried those, but Citracel is the common brand for the methyl cellulose, and I've seen some people in the online community do well with it. Okay, can a low nickel diet be nutritionally adequate? Okay, so if you have ever heard of the Nickel Navigator app, that helps you look up different foods to see what research has shown how much nickel might be in different foods. It's from a Canadian scientist called Rebelytics, and she did a really great study building mathematical models using nickel content data combined with some Canadian data, and did some models to look into what potential deficiencies might people get on the low nickel diet, and is it possible to formulate a low nickel diet that addresses these deficiencies, or are we just screwed? And she did a lot of good work. I would recommend, I'll have the link in like I should have already put the link, or at least the information. If you go to the Rebelytics site, let's see. Yeah, rebelytics.ca. In her research, it's called, Is a Low Nickel Diet Nutritionally Unbalanced? And you can read through the whole thing. It's really good. But she wanted to answer the questions, are nutrient-dense foods necessarily high in nickel? Which nutrients are vulnerable? And can a well-planned nutritional diet, low nickel diet, fix the gaps? So she found, yes, a lot of nutrient-dense foods tend to have more nickel, like the nuts, the seeds, and the legumes. But there are many other nutrient-dense foods that have less than 28 micrograms per serving. So if you just like willy-nilly unplanned a low nickel diet and just kind of did random low nickel diet, then that might cause some issues. So you want to be a little bit more strategic. But low nickel does not equal low nutrient. So here were the 9 vulnerable nutrients that she found. And I think I already listed them off earlier, but calcium, iron, magnesium, vitamin A, folate, choline, vitamin D, vitamin E, and fiber. But low nickel diet specific magnesium, folate, and fiber were some of the ones that we may want to focus a little bit more on. So what she found, a well-planned low nickel diet can meet the nutritional targets. She called it her bang for your buck model, which I thought was really cute. And that met all the RDAs except for vitamin D. So vitamin D supplementation is a really good idea, and really it should be for everyone. Same with magnesium, really. I think over 70% of the American population is deficient in magnesium. And that's because magnesium, so like 1 molecule of sugar that you consume requires 38 molecules of, or 38 molecules of magnesium for your body to process. So a lot of people eat a lot more carbs, a lot more sugars than is natural for us to eat, which means that we are really using up a lot of our magnesium sources. And magnesium usually comes in like fresh foods, right? So a lot of people are eating highly processed, highly sugar foods and not as many fresh foods. So we're getting more of that sugar, less of the magnesium, and then eating the sugar pulls more of our magnesium stores out to just process alone. So I thought that was like a really incredible thing that I learned in my nutrition training that really shows how damaging sugar consumption can actually be. It like literally steals nutrients from you. And something else that's incredible about it is that like if you got a sugar cane and you studied the sugar cane, just the way that sugar comes naturally, it comes surrounded by like 38 molecules. Like every molecule of sugar, you get 38 molecules of magnesium with it. So it's like nature knows this is how much magnesium you need to process the sugar. But when we process sugar, we strip out the magnesium. So yeah. All right, so top low nickel fruits and vegetables that address the gaps. So I want to tell you right now, I did create like a PDF of all this information that you can download. I'm going to be giving it in the community, but let me give you the link now. And you can download, it's like Deficiency and Supplement Guide, and you can get this list there as well. And most of you are already on my mailing list, so just put in your email address and you'll get this. But if you're already on the mailing list, like it's fine. Just give me the same email address that you have from before. Okay, so for example, what do I want to call out here? So something that may stick out to some people who already know about what is low and medium and high in nickel would see something like spinach and kind of freak out, because most people think that spinach is high nickel. I would first say it depends on the amount that you're eating, right? But also if you have baby spinach has less nickel in it because it wasn't in the soil as long. So it's something to add in a little bit if you are trying to get some of these nutrients. But for vitamin E, for example, you could also have broccoli, you could have leeks. I have a recipe in my cookbook that I love, 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 and it's a combination of cabbage, leeks, shallots. It's a beautiful green side that I bought some this week, so I'm gonna be doing, they're called sauteed greens in my cookbook. So that's really delicious. It's a great way to get your vitamin E, right? What else? Yeah, so there's like a beautiful smorgasbord of colorful fruits and vegetables here that are low in nickel that you can get these nutrients through. So something that I did this week when I was meal planning for myself is I looked at this list and I said, okay, for vitamin A, what am I going to be eating this week? So I'm going to be making the Moroccan meatloaf in my cookbook. That will have carrots. So I'll get some vitamin A there. I'll get some, what else? I also got some broccoli, so I'll get some vitamin E. I got some leeks, that's vitamin E. I got some cabbage, so that'll be vitamin A. I got some beets. I'm gonna make some of my Indian beet stew that's in my cookbook, so that will be folate. I got some bananas, that'll be magnesium. And my beets will give me some magnesium, my broccoli will give me some magnesium. Bananas will give me some fiber. I am also eating olives, which have good fiber in them. So yeah, so going through this list every week and being like, okay, let me just make sure that I'm eating some foods out of each of these categories, along with my beautiful meats. Okay, so gluten-free. You guys know that I am like, you gotta be gluten-free, especially at the beginning. Rebelytics identified wheat and rye products as addressing 5 of the 9 vulnerable nutrients. So just specifically for people who are doing that, which, like I said, I recommend it because the trade-off is that we're having a much better tight gut lining. That's what we really need to keep nickel out and keep inflammation down. So I'm going to recommend fortified gluten-free breads, white rice cakes, corn-based cereals if you really need that. But you can get all of these nutrients without any of these gluten-free things. You can get them from the previous slide, right? And I did write this. The trade-off is intentional. The gut barrier benefit of removing gluten outweighs the nutrient density loss because you can get that from other things. Okay, so also this is something that drives me crazy. Animal foods are nutrient dense, okay? Whenever people talk about nutrient dense, they're talking about like fruits and vegetables, when actually like pound for pound, like there's way more nutrients in meats and animal foods than that. Like these are not free of nutrients, okay? I mean, protein, of course, is really important. The fats are really, really important. But like iron, for example, the iron you get from animal products, heme iron, is 10 times more bioavailable than plant non-heme forms. Dairy calcium is far more bioavailable than calcium from plants. And bioavailable just means the ability for you to absorb and your body to get the nutrient out and use it and not have to process it through a billion steps. Anything from an animal is so much easier. Like our body knows immediately how to use it. It doesn't have to like put it through a bunch of processes and use all these nutrients in order to make more nutrients, in order to break it down. Animal products are where it's at, okay? So good for you. Bioavailable iron, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin D. Like these things are much easier to get, much easier to consume by your body than the plant forms. And your body is already working really, really hard to deal with this stupid allergy, right? So let's make it as easy as possible. Okay, so how I formulate the low nickel diet: gut health focus, like I said, with a short cooked meat stock every week. I make soups from it, or I just drink it every day. I add collagen powder to it to get some more protein, supplementing L-glutamine. Meat as a foundation, it's the foundation of every meal. So I prioritize nutrient-dense animal foods, eggs, fish, dairy, meats for the low nickel content. I focus on lifestyle a lot. So like systemic inflammation and this allergy and stressors in your life and not getting enough sleep, these really pull a lot of nutrients and use up a lot of nutrients in your body. It's one of the big reasons why people are so tired and why people get chronic fatigue with this allergy, is because of the system demand on it. So you want to reduce that demand, like really focus on sleep, really focus on hydration, really focus on reducing your stress. And that will make it so much easier on you. Individualized plant reintroduction. So you choose for yourself from the food lists. You can get the free low, medium, and high nickel food lists on my site, or I think it should be linked below. And pick the ones that you're most interested in, or that you miss the most. Start with those and do one for a couple of days and make sure you're good, and then you can add another one. Like variety is definitely where we're shooting for, like what we want to get to, but we want to do so in a way that's not increasing our systemic inflammation, right? Okay, so after I did this deep dive, after I looked into all of this, I am refocusing on like getting eggs, because that was one of the things that Rebelytics really showed, is that eggs are able to replace and give us a lot of those at-risk nutrients. So I'm going to hard boil some eggs. I'm going to add a hard-boiled egg for my with my lunch every day, and have eggs more often for breakfast. Incorporating spinach and leeks, and some of those other things on the list. Like I said, just looking every week at that list and picking some things out of every box to make sure that I'm getting those things. Focusing on that nutrient density and supplementing as needed. But those are some of the things that I've decided to focus a little bit more on. All right, so let's do practical takeaways and resources. So if you go to thelownickeldiet.com/resources, I have supplement recommendations there. After my study is done, obviously I'll be able to have like more definitive recommendations where I know for sure specific brands, at least in the past, have had certain levels of nickel in them. But I would recommend looking for third-party testing on your supplements, so USP, NSF, or Clean Label Project certifications. Choose chelated mineral forms and avoid proprietary blends because they won't tell you what's in it. There may be a bunch of fillers and stuff that have that nickel risk. And then also beware that like plant-derived supplements, they're gonna have nickel in them. And they're gonna carry a much higher nickel risk. All right, so next week, like I did ask my community what they wanted, and this was the first, this like won out to like be the most important, and the second most important was talking about the nickel and cobalt allergy combination. So next week we're gonna talk about that. But if you guys have topics you would like me to cover, like put them down below, put them in the comments, and if I don't already have it on my list, I'll put it on the list. And I will be putting another poll into the community to ask what topics they want next. So every Sunday we do live with some Q&A. We do a deep dive. It'll be at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Next Sunday, if you need a food list, it'll be linked below, or you can just email me, info@thelownickeldiet.com. And here are my sources. And there are many more. I have hundreds of them, so just let me know if you have questions. And let me look and see what you guys have been talking about. And any ideas for deep dives you want to do. Okay, so here's where we were last. My allergist is very MCAS aware, but still thinks I'll be okay with a nickel alloy stent. But I fear putting a permanent stent in me. Yeah, I understand. I've spoken with some people recently trying to make decisions about that, and I certainly can't tell you what to do. I can tell you something that I want people to consider is that, I mean, number one, that is an area I need to do a deep dive into. I have not spent a lot of time really digging into the, what is it called? Like implants, metal implants, and their impact either in causing or continuing to cause issues here. Now, obviously, if you have systemic nickel allergy, you are going to have immune cells going around looking for nickel. And if they see it from an implant, that can cause more inflammation, right? But plenty of people, there are studies that have been done. Like I said, I have not done a deep dive into this yet. People can be totally fine. I would say it totally depends on how sensitive you are. Now, if you used to have a really bad problem and then you trained your immune system to not be as reactive, then a little bit more nickel going around in your bloodstream may not be a problem, and you can keep at least the amount of nickel getting in from the outside as low as possible so that you still keep yourself under that threshold. Because a stent can be really helpful to keep you healthy and living longer, right? So, but there are a lot of options out there these days, and I would say like try to see if there are other options that don't have nickel in them and see if they're willing to put it in. And if they're not, it may just be that they don't feel comfortable with that particular stent because they have not used it before. And then I would ask them to recommend someone else who has used that stent. Because if a surgeon is not comfortable, you don't want them doing it. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that you shouldn't get it, just like find another surgeon. I had a patch test, had cobalt, and walked out of the hospital with nickel to go with it. Afraid to redo the test. I'm not sure what you mean by that. It seems the patch test hypersensitized me to, oh, okay, we talked about that. Amanda, so many people who are on the various groups talk about the issues after having metal put in their body. Yeah, I've definitely seen hundreds, hundreds of people talking about that. I have lots of histamine. I saw a chiropractor. Oh, we talked about the L-reiteri. Okay. Lots of it. Yeah, we talked about that. My allergist did a vitamin mineral deficiency blood work panel on me in February. Okay, I hope it was, you know, the best kinds. Some of them are crap. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I get in trouble sometimes in my group when I mentioned the strain in BioGaia is not a histamine intolerance concern. Now I'll make sure I post your videos and answer. Doctors have more credibility than I do. Okay, well, I mean, I could find a research paper that you could show them, but yeah, there are two different pathways. One is inflammatory, one is anti-inflammatory. Histamine is very good for us. It's just what pathway is it going down, right? That would be amazing to have data on supplements. Yes. Can you list up what kind of blood work is good for us to ask our doctor? Yes, that is in the guide. That was in the presentation. I see big improvement with vitamin C at mealtime. Yep. Okay, there's the supplement guide. I'm on a very strict diet and have no deficiencies. B6 and keratin were actually high, so I think it is possible for some people. I'm only taking a vitamin D supplement. Yeah. Yeah, I think most people probably need a vitamin D supplement. Vitamin D is very good for us, and most of us don't get enough. Which country has the lowest nickel foods? I don't know. Probably the country with the least amount of nickel in their soil. So like the flattest countries without volcanic activity. Volcanic soil has a ton of nickel in it. Thank you for an informative session. You're welcome, Amanda. I am Tara Alexandria. Hello, Tara. To be clear, you think we should definitely be gluten-free in order to keep our gut barrier as strong as possible, right? Thank you for these videos and your work. Yeah. Yeah, I will die on that hill. I'm not saying I'm gluten-free all the time, I'm not. But especially in the beginning, when your symptom burden is high and you can tell your gut barrier is not as strong as it should be, I would say just start with that. Just start with that so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about that possibility. Just go gluten-free and get everything else like calm down. And once everything is calm and you're not having symptoms anymore, then reintroduce it, because you'll already know how to eat low nickel. Your immune system will have calmed down, and then you may be able to handle it just fine. And especially like, then you can just, you know how to take vitamin C with your meal. So if you're eating something with a little bit more nickel, just eat more vitamin C with it, so it will bind that nickel. So even if you have a little intestinal permeability, there won't be as much nickel. I put egg yolks in my coffee. I've never heard of that. Is it good? Thank you for all the time you put into these deep dives. You're welcome, Lauren. It's very good for me. I enjoy it. Like I sat for like 5 hours straight yesterday morning putting the presentation together, and I like was so enjoying it and so honed in, just like loving reading these papers and loving putting it together. Like I love this sort of thing. So please keep giving me topics to do, because I just love what I'm learning. This is very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. The US doesn't have any nickel-free stents right now. Oh. I feel like there was one that I read about when I was looking into it for this other person. Does nickel mess up with the liver sulfur pathway? Liver sulfur pathway. I don't know the liver sulfur pathway. But I will write that on my list, and I will, let's see, this is Kenny Berry. Kenny Berry. I'm gonna write your name in this note, and I will find you. I don't know if you're on my mailing list. Kenny Berry 8957. Okay. If you really, really want to know, email me so I can email you back. Okay. I don't mind. I love GI pathology, so I don't mind learning more about that. Great info. It makes sense. I was gluten-free for 10 years and just added rye recently to add more variety. Been on low nickel diet for 1.5 years. Nice. Yeah, I was gluten-free. I was like low carb. I was carnivore. I was all of that for many years and did quite well. And then when I got that brain injury and changed my diet, all of a sudden I was eating way more like nuts and seeds and all of these high nickel things. And I think that's what tipped me over because I totally changed my diet. Yeah, the GAPS diet is very good, but it's high nickel, so it doesn't have to be high nickel, but I made it high nickel and it screwed me over. Okay, helps me digest all the important information when you've already gone through all the nitty-gritty data. I also am trying to learn how to communicate sciencey medical things in ways that a normal person can understand, because that is where like the value can be for people, right? Like I feel like when people understand their illness, they understand the mechanisms more, then they're more likely to be able to address them. They're more likely to stick with the things that they know will help them if they understand why it's going to help them. If they understand the mechanism of their disease and understand why this thing is going to like help with that mechanism, then they're going to be more likely to do the thing. And that's one of the big things that doctors will complain about and why they don't enjoy their job is they're like, well, why even tell this patient to change their diet? They're not going to do it. No patients ever want to do what I say. Well, maybe if we spent more time educating the patient on why the disease is the way that it is and why this thing is going to help the mechanism of that disease, they will like want to do the thing. You know what I mean? Thank you, Lauren. I remember I saw this patient in the hospital when I was on, what rotation was it? It was an ICU rotation. So really, really sick people. And this guy has cirrhosis, like terrible liver disease. And he hadn't been taking his medication, and it made him crazy because there's a certain buildup. Like if your liver is not able to process certain things, like your liver is really important for taking toxins and processing things and then getting rid of them so that they don't poison you. But if your liver is all messed up, then you get a buildup of these toxins, of these poisons, of these things. And that was what was happening to him, is he basically like lost his mind because his body was so filled of these toxins. And I was like, oh, well, were you taking this medication? And he said, no, I didn't know. No, I wasn't taking it. And I was like, okay, so that is the medication that would be able to break down and get rid of the things that are making you crazy. And he's like, really? I didn't know that. Nobody ever told me that that was the purpose of this medication. And it's like, if he had just known that, because he was so afraid of losing his, because this has happened to him before. He was so afraid of losing his mind, but he didn't realize this particular medication would keep that from happening. And so once he knew that, he was like, man, I'm never gonna like not take this medication. So I don't know, we just need to take a little bit more time to explain things to each other, right? Yeah, all right. Well, any last minute questions or topics, let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate you staying a little bit late with me. We got off on some fun little tangents together, but it was fun. So thanks for being here. I will see you guys next week, next Sunday, and we'll talk about cobalt and nickel allergy. All right. Bye-bye. Have a great Sunday.